This is what my math looks like. I do kind of bling it out quite a bit in terms of adding. This is a background that I created in Photoshop, and then as part of my template, I then upload into my first page. Everything on here is the bad part about it is that everything on here is stagnant in terms of like the boxes are all stagnant. It's just the words inside that are not. To where obviously like the fonts for starters and lesson and that sort of thing, those are stuck in place. But everything else, the words is what I can switch out from day to day, which I do. For me, the way that I set this thing up is I try to step the students through a complete lesson. One thing I should say is like when I talked about getting to know what I can and cannot do with Seesaw, what I told my parents more than my kids, because the students are happy to follow along. But for the parents I knew that would be checking in, I wanted to let them know that I kind of viewed Seesaw as being sort of like a freeway. It's a vehicle that gets me places, but it doesn't mean that we're going to spend our entire time on there. We're going to be on it every day to get to those places, but we're going to take surface streets to get to other joints. And that's, very much how we use it. There are days when we spend the entire day on Seesaw, and that's just fine. But there's many a day that we will use it to kind of app smash and get into other things that might serve our purposes better. So looking through this for my math, we start with a starter. I have links to my pages. I don't know how necessary they are. I started with that because I had no idea whether or not how the students navigated it from their point of view. So I immediately started building it to where I had these links to the different pages. But I've learned that for my fifth graders, they just navigate through the pages down through here. So this might be completely superfluous. There are times when I believe that all the design that I put in this might be just for my edification, which is fine. But anyhow, for my math lesson, I'll start with a starter. I like to label things for the most part so the students, not just the students, but also for my parents, so that they know if they're looking at it, what it is that they're looking at, and that this should either be review or something to advance it. This one, looking back on it, I think I got like 3 pages of starters. I might dial that back now that I think about it. My lesson, same sort of thing, to where I like to label my lessons for what they are, for the same reason. For those parents that are looking through it, I've had, I just learned through trial and error that I've had some parents that were like, well, my student isn't showing a whole lot of work on some of these pages. And some of the pages aren't designed for them to show a lot of work, but rather I want it to be almost like a notebook, to where while they're working on pages that are supposed to be done independently, I can say, we'll go back into your Seesaw. We did something together on slide number 5 that should be able to help you. Or even during assessment, I might tell them, like, listen, open up last Thursday's Seesaw. You're going to see within that lesson what it is that you're supposed to be doing on this particular set of problems. But that's why I mark it as the lesson. Anything that's part of like what I'm trying to instruct them at that time. For the most part, I try to work out at the Seesaw, but I'll be honest with you, since I do work off of 2 computers, there are times when I will switch over to, I might have some old flip charts on Active Inspire or something like that, only because I find it a little bit easier to write and notate on Active Inspire than I do on Seesaw, just in terms of pen size and so forth. But for the most part, I do try, like I said, because I want them to be able to keep this as a note catcher, as some sort of document that they can refer back to. I like to try to keep the lessons in place and to, like I say, label it as being part of the lesson. Let's see, this is all still part of what we're doing in class together and still part of the lesson. Oh, when I say in the classroom, this is more something where it's like, this is more than the lesson. This is us working together on something. And what I do, you do, I'm going to show you how to do it, and then you're going to do it on your own. I will have what's their independent work. Like I said, I try to label it so that way mostly parents can see. The students, like I said, will just work from one slide to the next and go from start to finish. It's not anything to them. But I do want parents to be able to see, hey, what is it that I'm expecting? What am I expecting them to do on their own? And I'll probably have, a couple of pages of this, and then finally hit the check mark and they're done. This seems to be our biggest challenge. This whole hitting the green check mark thing. And I don't think it's because they don't know they're supposed to do it. just that they fight the urge to do it sometimes. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of how my math will roll. They're not always quite so long. This is just something to where there's not a lot of computation for them to do. I'm just trying to get them some at-bats before we do something on their own. It's an introduction to something, so there are far more examples than I usually have. But that is how my math will roll.